In today's video, we're going to be covering a very crucial topic when it comes to building a complex app. And that is the ability for different kinds of users to have different permissions when it comes to doing various things inside of your app. So if you have admins, if you have viewers, if you have editors, if you have just regular unauthenticated users, they should all have slightly different permissions and different abilities to do various things in your app. And this is a crucial topic because this is going to be something that you're going to be dealing with regardless of what kind of app you're going to be building. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I discuss on this channel are going to be available to view and or clone from my Patreon page. And if you're still not a member of our amazing, rapidly growing Patreon community, then you can learn more about it using the link in the description below the video. All right, so here I built a quick app using Supabase and Auth Flow, and this is an app that lists various blog articles. Okay, so anybody can come in, they can create a new blog article, they can modify other blog articles, and they can also delete blog articles. So let's say I come in, I see 4 blog articles here, and I can create a new one. So I can simply click here and I can create a new blog article. So I can say something like advanced Auth Flow training. Okay, and then I can create a sample body. In this article, we'll discuss advanced Auth Flow training. And after I finish writing all this, I can click on create. And I have this new article created. Now I can click on read now and I can read this article. Okay, I'm going to be redirected to a different screen. And I can also modify this article, right? I can do that by clicking anywhere on the body here. So if I click here, this becomes editable automatically. So I can change the title, change the body. So let's say advanced Auth Flow training, 5 tips you need to master. So something like this. And then in this article, we're going to advance Auth Flow training that will help you build better apps. All right, so then I hit save. We've just updated an existing article, and if I go back, I see this new article here. Now you can also delete articles. So if you click on any of the articles here, so for instance, let's say we click on this article, there's a button that allows you to delete an article. So if I click here, that's gonna go ahead and delete, and if you go back, you no longer see that article anymore. And I'm also using Supabase as the backend. So if you go back to Supabase, we have one table called articles, and we have things like title, body, number of comments, and various tags for the articles, just to show you how you can store this type of data there. And so this is a nice app, and regardless of what kind of user you are, whether you are logged in, whether you're an admin, whether you're anonymous, whether you're just somebody who found this app randomly, you have lots and lots of permissions as to what kind of actions that you can take within this app. So if I send you a link to this app and you've never seen this app before, you've never used it before, you can do a lot of things. You can create new articles, you can edit existing articles, you can delete all kinds of articles, you can come in and delete all the articles if you want. And while you're listening to me, you may be thinking to yourself, well, isn't this a problem? Isn't this an issue that, one person wrote this article and anybody can come in and they can delete this article or change it or do anything that they want? There's, somebody creates a new article, but it's not clear who exactly created this article. And you would be absolutely correct. This is a big issue. You definitely cannot launch this kind of an app on the internet because there's no permissions, there's no authentications, and most importantly, there's no authorizations, because anybody can come in and they have the exact same rights as the next person. And so in this video, we are going to be adapting various techniques in order to set up different permissions and authentications as well as authorizations in this app. Now, right now, our app looks like this. So regardless of what kind of user you are, you have the exact same permission as the next person. And this is definitely a problem. And so before we can set up various permissions and various, capabilities for each of the users, we need to figure out who exactly is the user that's using the app, and that is called setting up authentication. And so let's go back to our app and let's configure Supabase as our authentication manager. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna search for authentication here in our Auth Flow, and we are going to enable authentication here. We're going to set up authentication type as Supabase. And once we configure authentication, it needs to know the initial pages. So we have the logged in page, which is home, but we do not have the login page. Okay, so we're going to go back here and we're going to add another page that's going to take in the user's credentials and hopefully authenticate them if they've provided the right credentials. And let's go ahead and search for login. And here's a nice template we can use. So let's go ahead and pick this one. We're going to save it as login, create page. And now we have a login template. So if you click on sign in and you click over here, this is automatically set to log in using our Supabase. So now we can go back to our authentication page and we can use that login as the entry page. Okay, and now we should have no errors over here. And another thing that I want to do is I want to create a profile page where we can see who is the user that's logged in. And that way they can see whether it's the correct user. And they can also log out and maybe log in as another user. So we're going to add another page over here. I'm going to search for a profile page and let's use something like this. And we're going to save it as profile. So we have a profile page. And I also want to create a navbar so that once the user is logged in, they have a way to go to the profile page. So I'm going to search for navbar, select our navbar. It wants at least 2 pages to be navbar enabled. So we're going to enable it on the home page. We have it enabled here. And for the profile, we're going to enable it here. Okay, so now we have this. Let's go ahead and change the icon for the profile page as the user right here. So we have the profile page and we have the home page. And now if we run the app, it's going to first check if we are logged in. If we're not logged in, it's going to show us the login page. So let's go ahead and do a reload and see our new app and see this new flow. All right, so now our app is asking us to log in. And because we've never logged in before, this app has no users currently set up, so we wouldn't be able to log in. So let's go ahead into Supabase, and if you're using Supabase as your auth backend, it's actually very, very easy. So in this table editor, change the schema from public to auth. And once you do that, you're going to be seeing different tables. You want to click on users. And here in this users table, you're going to be seeing various users that have access to this app. So right now, there are no users here. And so we need to create a new user that will have access to this app. And you can do that by clicking authentication and selecting users here. Then you want to click on add user, and we're going to do create new user. And we're going to enter the email and the password. So I'm going to do james@james.com. And for the password, let's go ahead and suggest a new password here. Okay, so this is a password. And we are going to leave this at auto-confirm user here, create this user. Okay, so it went ahead and created this user, and now we have at least 1 user set up. And so now we can go back to the app and log in as that user. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as james@james.com, put in the password, click on sign in, and we should hopefully be logged in. Okay, so now the app knows who the user is. Okay, so now you can't be just an anonymous user. You can't be just a random person off the street. Anything that you do inside of the app can be potentially tracked. So a couple of things that I want to do right now is I want to display the, the actual user email here. And if you go to the profile page, I want to display some kind of user information here. So at least it's personalized to some extent. So let's go back to our app and let's go ahead and click on home. And for this hey user, we are going to say hey user, but we're also going to have their email show up, for instance. So if we click here, we have access to this authenticated user object with various things inside. So we have email, user ID, we have phone number, all of these other things. So let's say we want to display their email. So I'm going to say email, and then it's going to say hey user and the email. And then for the profile, let's go ahead and have this display their email as well instead of some random name. So I'm going to click here. authenticated user email here, and it's going to display the logged in user's email. I'm going to delete all this because we don't really need this. This is not applicable to our app. Something like this. And this logout is actually linked to a logout action. So if the user clicks here, they are going to log out of the app. Okay, so let's go ahead and refresh our app with these new changes and see what happened. All right, so now our app is actually displaying the email here of the logged in user. And as you can see, it says james@james.com. And let's quickly fix this. This should be hey, just the user. I'm going to delete hey user here because that's taking up a lot of space. So I'm just going to say hey, just a quick change. Let's go ahead and reload the app. All right. So now it's saying, hey, james@james.com. And if you click on this profile page, we see james@james.com. So right now, regardless of what you're doing, there's this logged in user information. And so we can choose to use it. We can choose to not use it. And typically you want to make use of this information in various situations. So for instance, as you can see, it says John Doe, John Doe, John Doe everywhere. And so we need to change it so it's actually tracking the actual user who created this specific article. And so let's go ahead and do that. So if we go back to Supabase, we click on table editor here, and we click on articles. Our articles right now does not have any user information. Okay, we have just the articles, but it's not clear who actually was responsible for creating this article. Okay, and so we need to add another column that's going to have the user information, the created user information. And actually, if you click on the schemas here and you go to auth, and we go back to our users table, this system users table is going to be storing various users. So as you can see, we have this one user that we've just created, and each of these records here is going to be identified by this unique ID here. And so we can potentially link this ID to any of the other tables where we want to store the user. So let's go back to our public table here, that article, and let's go ahead and create a new column that's going to have this user information that's going to be linked to our users table. So I'm just going to say user ID here, and we're going to add a foreign key relation, and we're going to do it to auth, and we're going to select users, and we're going to select this user ID. I'm going to hit save. And now it went ahead and created a relationship. This user ID is going to be linked to the other user. Okay, so if we choose to actually supply the authenticated user when creating an article, we will have records of who was the user that created that specific article. Okay, we're going to hit save, and that's going to go ahead and create a new column here. And now if we go back to our table, as you can see, we have this new column. And so now I can potentially assign all of these articles to myself, which is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to double click here, select myself, select this user here. We only have one user. I'm going to click here, select this here, and I'm going to do that for the rest of the articles as well. And so now all the articles are assigned to me. And so now when we display the list of articles, I can display any kind of information. I can get their name, email, etc., etc. Now, just to simplify it, I'm going to display the user ID. Just to simplify things, because we have direct access to the user ID. In order to get other information, we have to create a view, we have to do join. So I'm just going to simplify things. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to display the user ID. Now, before I can do that, I need to go back to settings. I need to go to Supabase here, and I need to get the schema. I need to refresh the schema because we added a new column. So I'm going to do get schema. And now this has this user ID that we can use in our UI. So I'm going to go back here, John Doe. I'm going to click here, articles row. And I'm going to have this user ID, which is just a string. Click confirm. And now it's going to have this user ID. And so if you take a look at our table here, my user ID is this long user ID, and it starts with 038. Now, because my user ID is very, very long, I'm just going to limit this to 5 characters, right? Maximum of 5 characters. and it's going to do a cutoff, right? So it's not going to display the rest of the characters. So now let's go ahead and reload the app and see if the user is being displayed for each of the articles. All right, so now as you can see, it doesn't say John Doe anymore. It actually has the beginning of the user ID. And as I said, my user ID starts with 0371. As you can see here, 03871, and we go in here, 03871. And now all these articles are assigned to me. And we can also do the same thing if one creates new articles. And so if somebody clicks on this button and a new article is created, we're going to automatically assign it to myself. Okay, and actually, when you click on this, we have a pop-up, which is this pop-up right here, and this actually creates a new article. So we're going to open it up and we have an insert row call, okay? And this is responsible for creating new articles. And as you can see, it has title, body, num, comments, and tags. So we need to add a new field. And this field is going to be user ID. So we don't need these fields, but we do need the user ID. And for the value, we're going to select authenticated user and we're going to select this user ID here. And that way, anytime somebody creates a new articles, they're going to be automatically assigned to the authenticated user. And that's going to add some accountability to our app, right? Because now you cannot create new articles if you're not logged in. And we're also going to be tracking who is the person that created this new article. Okay, so let's go ahead and reload our app and let's try creating a new article. All right, there's our app. Let's go ahead and click here. Let's create a new article. So new article 1, new body 1. Click create. All right, and there's the new article. And as you can see, it has been automatically assigned the authenticated user, which is myself. And so there's that authenticated user. And so if you go ahead and create a new article, it's going to be assigned to you automatically. And we can do that very, very easily. We can simply go back, create a new user here in this authentication. Let's go ahead, create a new user, and let's say your name is Tom. We're going to do tom@tom.com. And we are going to add a password here, auto confirm user, create user. And now we have another user. So now I can go back to my app. I can log out. We're back to the login screen. I'm going to log in as tom@tom.com. Okay, sign in. We're inside the app. And now if I create a new article, it's going to be assigned to Tom. So new article, new title for Tom, new body for Tom. Okay, hit create. And what do we see? We have another user ID, which is different than these user IDs. And that is because Tom's user ID, probably a very, very good chance, begins with this 8A, 8AE. And so if we go back here and we go to our users table, this authentication, click on this users, we should see this Tom's record. And as you can see, this is Tom right here, the second record, and it's 8A, 8AE here for Tom. All right, so now we've added an important piece of functionality to our app, and we've added authentication. And what this enables us to do is it enables us to know who exactly is the user that using our app. So regardless whether it's this user, or just about anybody else, if they have the right credentials, they're going to get access to our app, and we are going to know who exactly is the user that's using our app. Now, once the user logs in, they have the exact same permissions as the next user, but at least we are tracking who the user is, and we are not allowing anonymous users to use our app without being able to log in. So this is a big, big improvement, but we're still not done yet. The next thing that we need to do is we need to set up various permissions inside of the app. And so what we need to know is whether this user has the permissions to do various things inside of the app. And so let's say one of the users is an admin. Well, an admin typically is able to do anything and everything. They can create new content, they can delete content, they can edit content, they have lots and lots of permissions, whereas a writer has limited permissions. So if an admin can do everything, a writer can create new content, they can also modify their own content, and they may be able to delete just their own content. And the next type of user could be a user that doesn't fall into one of these categories. Okay, so this is a user that doesn't have admin rights, and this is a user who did not write any of the articles. And in that case, they should be able to simply read the articles and maybe have some other permissions, such as leave comments, reviews, things like that. But unlike a writer, they should not have the ability to modify or alter other people's content. And actually, if you think about, this is how the real world works, right? If you are the owner of the house, then you have the permission to do anything and everything to that house, right? You can do anything, you can fix things up, you can break things if you want. It's your house, right? Whereas if you are a tenant, if you're renting the house, then you have limited permissions. You don't have as much permissions as the owner. You have limited. Whereas if you are somebody who is not the owner and who is not the tenant, you are somebody who is just walking by, then you might have very, very limited permissions. In many cases, you can only look at the house. You can't come in. You can't go inside the house because that's trespassing. You have very, very limited permissions. And this is the case with lots and lots of situations. And that's why it's very, very important when you're building your apps to set it up the right way. And when it comes to setting up these permissions in your app, that is called setting up authorization, as opposed to authentication, which is merely checking whether the user has the right credentials to view the app and possibly do more. Now, when it comes to authorization, there are three ways to solve this problem. The first way is by setting up these permissions at the database layer. The second way is to set up these permissions at the app layer. And the third way is to set up these permissions both at the app layer and at the database layer. Okay, so if you set up these permissions only at the database layer, then you will be able to enforce all of these things only at the database layer, which means that yes, there are certain things that the user will be able to do or won't be able to do, but all the users will see the exact same app. They will see the exact same functionality. So even if it's like a regular user that cannot delete random articles, they will still see that delete button, that delete icon, except when they click on that button, they won't be able to complete that action because they do not have that permission at the database layer. You can also do it only at the app layer, which means that depending on the user, they will see different UI elements. And so this is going to be a lot more intuitive. And so unlike an admin, a regular user will not see functionality that only an admin has access to. So things like deleting an article, editing somebody else's article, they just won't have that capability because this is going to be enforced on this app layer here. However, if there's some bug in your app or there's some issue in your app and you provide the functionality for them to do something that they shouldn't be able to do, and you are not restricting that on the database layer, then they'll be able to connect to the database and do the action. Last but not least, you can also do it on both layers, and this is the recommended method. You can enforce it on the database layer, and you can also enforce it on the app layer, and this is the recommended way, because now not only are you checking your permissions at the database layer, you are also displaying the right UI depending on whether the specific user has the permissions to do the specific action. And so in this tutorial, we are going to be setting up our authorization permissions on both of these layers. So on the database layer, as well as on the app layer. So that way we have a very, very robust production ready app. Now, before we actually set up these permissions, it's important to understand how authorization works. So authorization is not set up directly on the user's level. It's actually set up on the roles. And so the way this works is that you have one or many users that are assigned to a specific role. And that role in turn has specific permissions to do a specific action. So this is going to be permission here. And so let's say we have several roles. We have the admin role and we have the writer role. Well, once you create these roles, you're going to be assigning various users to each one of these roles. So let's say you have this user here. They're going to be assigned to this role. And let's say you have this user here and they're going to be assigned to this role instead. Now you can assign as many users as you want to a particular role, right? You can assign both of these users to the admin role, and maybe the writer role is actually empty. There are no users in that role right now, but later on when a new user signs up, a new user gets created, you can assign them to this role. And just like how you can have many users, you can also have many roles as you need in your specific app requirement. And so now that you understand the basic authorization structure, let's go ahead and set up our roles, our users, and our user to role mapping. And we can do just that by creating different tables. So here I am back in Supabase, and what I want to do is I want to create a new table called roles. Okay, and this is going to be a very, very simple table. It's going to have ID, created at, and the role name. So I'm going to say role name, and role name is going to be text. And the purpose of this table is just to have our roles, to list our roles. So I'm going to hit save. All right, so our table has been created. Let's go ahead and add a couple of roles. So we're going to add a new role here, and this role is going to be an admin, and another role that we're going to add, and this is going to be a writer. All right, so now we have two roles that we have created. The next thing that we need to do is we need to create another table that's going to map various users to various roles. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new table. We're going to call it user roles. And this table is going to be using a many-to-many mapping. Okay, so you may have many users mapped to many roles. So here I'm going to add two columns, and this is going to be the user ID, and this is going to be the role ID. And we're going to do an edit foreign key relation. So we're going to link that to our users table. Let's go ahead and select users ID here. And this is going to be linked to our roles. Here are roles and also ID here. Okay. Next, we're going to click on save, create this new table. All right. Our user roles table has now been created. And so now if I want to assign a specific user to a specific role, I can do that by simply adding a record. So we're going to add a row, and I'm going to assign myself to the admin role, for instance. Okay, so I'm going to select myself. I'm going to select James here, and I'm going to select this admin role. Okay, hit save. And now I have been assigned to the admin role. Now I can also assign Tom to the writer role. Okay, so I can add a row, and I can select Tom here, Tom, and I can select the role. So I'm going to select the writer role. Okay, so now we save that. So now we have two records, which means that we have assigned two users to a specific role. So this is me. I'm assigned to the admin role here. And this is Tom. And Tom is assigned to the writer role. Okay, so now we have the beginning of our mapping. So if you take a look here, we have this done. We still need to create permissions. We need to create specific permissions that only allow a specific action to a specific role, not to a specific user, but to a specific role, and by extension, to all the users that are assigned to that specific role. Now, how can we do that? Now, at the database level, we can leverage a very, very useful feature called RLS, or row level security. And this is a Supabase feature that enables us fine-grained control on a row level access depending on different parameters. So like who the user is or who the role is that the user falls into, as well as what the request is trying to do. So are we trying to create a new article? Are we trying to update a new article? There's all of these things that can be easily defined using RLS. And so if we click on articles here, as you can see, we have one active RLS policy, and that policy allows all access regardless of who you are. There's essentially no checks being done. So if you are James, if you're Joe, if you're Mike, if you are Amanda, if you're anybody, it doesn't really matter who you are. If you can log into the app, you can do anything that you want because we only have one policy, and that policy doesn't really do anything. It's like we have a door, we have a gate, but that gate is wide open. So we have it, but it doesn't really do anything useful. It just allows everything through, right? It allows all the operations to be executed, okay? And so what we now need to do is we need to create specific RLS policies that will allow us to do specific things depending on the role of the user. So for admins, we want them to be able to do everything. But for writers, we don't want them to ability to delete other articles. We want them to be able to read articles, create new articles, but not update or delete articles that are not there. And so the next thing that you want to do is you want to click on new policy, and you have a couple of options. You can get started quickly, or you have full customization. And so if you click on get started quickly, you have various templates, okay? So this is the RLS policy that we're using right now, enable read access to everyone, right? This is the default policy that you have to set up on a table if you're not yet sure what you're going to be doing, right? This is great for testing. This is great for kind of debugging. But later on, as you're going to be implementing these authorizations permissions, you need to kind of fine tune, right? You need to tailor these policies. Now, we also have enabled insert access for authenticated users. Okay, so this is a good policy. This might be a decent policy, but we need something better, right? So we have enable access on users based on their email. Okay, so you can allow users based on their specific email to be able to update articles. Okay, you also have enable delete access for users based on their user ID. Okay, so now we are getting somewhere, right? So this policy here will only allow users to delete an article if the user ID matches of the user ID that initially created the article. And so actually this is a very, very good policy, because for writers, this is exactly what we want. We want to give them the ability to delete articles, but only if they are the original person, okay? So here, as you can see, it's checking of the logged in user UID, and then it's checking the user ID in these articles, right? So if the user ID matches to the logged in user ID, it will allow us to delete these articles. Okay, so this is a great policy. The only problem is that it's based on the user ID. We want it to be based on the role. We wanted to check the role of the user and then do the proper logic. And last but not least, we have enabled insert access for users based on their user ID. So here they can insert based on their user ID. Now, these are all great policies, but because we are building a system based on roles, and we've created a bunch of other tables, such as roles and user roles, where we have the mapping, we are not only going to be using user IDs, we need to be using the roles as well, which means that our policy is going to be a little bit more complex, but overall it's going to be a lot more flexible, because once we have these policies in place, then you can simply add the users to the roles via the UI, and everything is going to work as expected. Now, to simplify things, I actually asked ChatGPT to create the roles for me. And so I said, I have a table called articles. I want you to create the following 3 RLS policies. Admin users can create, edit, and delete articles. Article owners matching on user ID in the articles table can create and edit their own articles. Everyone, including non-users, can view all articles. And ChatGPT went ahead and created these policies for me. Now, it was also smart enough to tell us the prerequisites. So it says here, ensure that you have roles table and a user roles table to manage user roles. And the articles table should have a user ID column to identify the owner of each article. And so if we go back to our Supabase, and we take a look just to make sure that everything kind of fits in, we have the articles, and we should have a user ID right here. So we have the user ID, and we have the roles as well here, role name, and we have the user roles, which is our many-to-many relationship where we can assign users to role. So this is exactly what we have, and so we can use the policies that it has created for us. And so here's the first policy. Admin users can create, edit, and delete articles. And so we're going to copy this code right here, and then we're going to click on SQL editor. We're going to paste this query here, and you want to make sure that the name of your role matches, right? So I believe our role is actually capitalized. So I'm going to change this to admin. And in fact, if we open up the table editor here and we click on roles, I believe our roles are capitalized. So if you take a look here, they are capitalized. Okay, so you want to make sure you double check. It says admin here. We're going to run this and see what happens. It says success, no rows returned. All right, so we've just went ahead and created our first policy, and this is for the admin role. So the users that are placed in the admin role have wide access. They can do all kinds of interesting things, including creating, deleting, updating, etc., etc. And this is great because now I can simply come over here and I can go to user roles and I can see, okay, who are the users in this admin role right now? This role ID 1, which is the admin role, there's only one user, which is me. That means I have full access. But if we log in as Tom, Tom would have such access. Now let's go back into articles, click on this 2 active RLS policies. And as you can see, we have this new policy created. We have this old policy here. This is that public policy. We're going to delete it because now we don't want things to be wide open. So I'm going to delete this here. And now when I log in as myself, because I'm part of the admin role, I should be able to do pretty much anything and everything that I was able to do with that wide open policy. Okay. All right, so now let's go back to our app. Let's create a new user session. All right, so here's our app. Let's go ahead and log in as myself here, james@james.com. All right, and here I can see all the articles that are in the system. That is because I have access to pretty much anything and everything. So if I click here, read, I should be able to modify this article as well. So if I click here, I want to modify it. So let's say I delete that, 2024 comparison, do a quick change, hit save, and that should update it. Okay, so looks like I'm able to update. Let's go ahead and delete this article, new article 1. Let's go ahead and delete it. Okay, that article is done. Let's go ahead and delete Tom's article as well. Okay, Tom's article is done. So looks like I'm able to do pretty much everything. So essentially, I'm able to do everything that I could have done before when we didn't have specific policies. Now, let's go ahead and log in as Tom. Okay, we should not be able to do lots of things as Tom because Tom is actually in another role. And so let's come in here. Let's log out and let's log in as Tom here, tom@tom.com. Let's go ahead and log in. And what do we see? We don't see anything. We do not see a thing, and that is because there's no specific policy that allows Tom to do anything. There is no policy for Tom, and policies are exclusive, right? If there is no policy, then tough luck. You cannot do anything. And so I can come back over here. I can see the account screen, but I can't do anything. I don't have read access. I don't have write access. I don't have delete access. I don't have new access. I don't have update access. I do not have anything. And that is because we still need to create a policy for another role, the writer role. Now, for the writer role, I was also able to get ChatGPT to generate the SQL statements for these new policies. So here's a policy for creating new articles. We're going to copy it right here. Go back here, go to our SQL editor and paste this new policy. And this policy is called insert article. And this is for the articles table. This is only for the insert command, which is what you use to create new articles. And first, it's checking whether the user is in the right role. And actually roles, this should be role_name. Everything else looks correct. We're going to run it. And now we've created a new policy that allows the writers to create new content. So if a user is in the writer role, they should be able to create new content. But we're not done just yet. We also have another policy for editing and deleting own articles. And this is a policy for the writer role where the user is able to update and delete their own articles if they're the owner and if they are part of the writer role as well. So we're going to copy this right here, come back to SQL, create a new query, paste it in here. So this policy is called update, delete own articles, articles, update, and delete. Okay. So this should be a role name as well. Let's go ahead and execute it. All right, now it says success, no rows returned. And last but not least, we want everyone, including non-users, to view all articles. Okay, so we're gonna copy this right here, and we're gonna come back here, and we're gonna create our final policy. We're gonna paste this here, and this policy is called view all articles. And this is only for select, which means this is a read-only view, and there are no checks. That means that it's gonna go through. Okay, we're gonna execute this. Success, no rows returned. And now our access control system is a lot more tailored. It's a lot more fine-tuned as to who exactly the user is, not just any logged in user, and what exactly they can do on what kind of data. Okay, so let's go ahead and run our app, and let's see what's happening here. Okay, all right, so here we are logged in as Tom, and Tom should be able to view all articles, but he can only edit or update their own articles. Okay, so as you can see, Tom does not own any of the articles right now, and so if we click on any of these articles, they should not be able to update them. So let's say this comparison, this is my user ID, right? This is my own article. So if I click on read now, I can read this article as Tom, but I should not be able to update it. So if I click here, I am shown the UI. So it looks like I'm able to update these articles, but the backend should not allow me. So let's go ahead and change this. So let's change no update. Okay, let's go ahead and click save. And as you can see, it did not save. And that is because the backend did not allow me to save this article that I do not own. Let's try another article. How about this one? This is also not my article. This is James' article. If I click here and let's say I want to update it, I can just click here. The UI once again gives me the impression that I can update any article that I want, but it's not gonna work. So let's go ahead and just remove all that. 5 apps, no update. Okay, so that we see whether the article was successfully updated or not. Let's click on save, and nothing happened. Okay, so we have the impression that we can update the article, but our system is fine-tuned in the back, which disables the ability for somebody else to come in and update these articles. Now, we should be able to create a new article, and we should be able to update or delete an article that we own. Okay, click here, new article, times title, times article content, and it looks like there's some issue here, okay, because it's not creating this new article. And if we go back to our policies, let's go ahead, click on article, let's see what the issue is. We have a policy called insert article, and if we click here, we edit it. Looks good, except it's checking for a role called write, and we do not have a role called write. We have a role called writer. So we need to update it. We need to make sure it's the right role because we don't have that role. So that is why it's not finding the user. It should be writer. Review, save policy. Okay, so that was updated, so now it should work. Okay, let's go back and let's go ahead and create a new article. So Tom's new title, Tom's new body, create, and we should have it. And there's the new article, and there's the Tom as the owner. Now we can click on this article and we can also update it, right? Because we should have that permission. Actually, we need to double check that the role is correct. So if we go back here, this is this update on article, edit, and it's right again. It should be writer. Let's go ahead and fix these policies here. Update, delete on article. We need to fix that too as well. Writer. Save that. Okay, so that was saved. Now it's in effect. Let's go back here and we should be able to update this. Hit save. And as you can see, this was updated, right? Which was not the case previously when we tried to update somebody else's articles. And so if you go back here and you want to update my article, you can click here, put something like this, and you shouldn't be able to do that because you do not own that article. Hit save and nothing happens. Okay, because it doesn't update it. The database does not give it the permission, right? The database is, we're being restricted at the database level from doing this, right? And this is very, very important. So right now, we have everything working fine. We have various roles. We have users assigned to each of the roles. We have various permissions. Everything is working fine. And so at this stage of the game, we have database layer locked up. We have it locked up with the right permissions, with the right restrictions that are set up according to our spec. right? We have various roles, and these roles could do various things. But as you might have noticed, the UI still behaves like a user can do anything that they want, because everybody sees the delete button. Everybody, if you click on update, you get that update UI. And so users can get confused when they see that. They think it's an error. If they click on the delete button, they can't delete an article because it's not theirs, and nothing happens. It's bad user experience. And so not only do we need to lock it up at the database layer, we also need to lock it up at the app layer as well. And so let's go ahead and lock it up at the app layer as well. And actually locking it up at the app layer is a lot simpler than locking it up at the database layer. All right, so here's our app. And the first thing that we need to do in order to lock it up and kind of restrict the UI and have this new, delete button only accessible to users that own the article and have that UI working is that we need to understand not only who is actually logged in, but what are their roles. We need to know the person's roles. And we can easily determine the logged in user's role by asking Supabase, okay? Because we know who is logged in. Supabase has all the information. We have the tables. We have all of that set up. The only thing that we need to do is we need to make a call to Supabase and get the roles that the user may fall under, okay? And we can do that by sending in an API request. So if you go over here, you have this API section where you can define and execute various API calls. And which API call are we going to be sending in order to get a list of roles? Well, that's actually very, very simple. If you go back to your database, you go to your tables, you have the all-important user roles table, okay? So if you come over here, you can execute an API call and you can see exactly who the user is and then what role there are, right? So take a look here. You can click on API docs here, and you can do filtering, right? So that means you can send a request and you can say, well, I am logged in as James at james.com. Tell me what roles that user has, okay? So here we have filtering. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my key. So now I have my request with filtering, and that way I can just copy it. And here I have an app that allows me to test various requests. So I can import this request over here, and I can send this request with the user ID, with the email, and that's going to tell me what roles the user is. So I can send the user ID, I can send an email, I can send in anything that I want. And so here we have the request fully configured, and let's go ahead and do some filtering. Okay, so we're filtering by ID, and we're saying ID is equal to 1, and we want to select everything, right? We want to select everything. So let's go ahead and execute this and see the response here. Okay, and this is the response here, and we're getting back this role ID. Okay, so we're passing in the ideal one. I can also pass in, of course, in your app, you're not going to be passing ID 1. You're going to be passing this user ID. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this user ID filtering equals to this. And if we send that, we get the same thing, except we get role ID 1. Now, role ID 1 is not very, very helpful to us, right? We actually want to know what is the name of the role, right? Is it an admin role? Is it the writer role? Is it the reader role? 1 is not very, very helpful. And so in order to get the names of these roles, we need to create a new view for this table. So we're going to go back here, and we need to create a view that's going to have essentially the same information, but we need the name, right? The name of the role. And obviously, if the user belongs to multiple roles, we want these roles to be displayed in one field. And we can easily do that by creating a view. So let's go back here. Let's do a new query, and we can use Supabase AI to build a specific view that does that. Create a view that displays the user ID and a list of role names they belong to. Okay, so let's go ahead and execute this, and let's see if it's able to do. And there we have it. Okay, so it's creating a view called user roles view, and it's pulling up all the information, and it's also joining it on the roles table that has the names of the roles. Let's go ahead and accept this change. Let's go ahead and run this and see if this works. Success, no roles returned. That's a good sign. Let's go back to table editor. And we have this new view here. Click here, and we should have the names of the roles. And as you can see, it's an array. So if a user potentially is in multiple roles, then this is going to have multiple names of these roles. Right now, we have each user in its own role. But if I go ahead and add myself as a writer as well, or some other user is in multiple roles, this is going to have multiple roles, which is very, very helpful for us. But this is enough for this specific use case. And so let's go back to our app and leverage this view here in order to figure out where exactly this user is, what roles is the user a member of, so that we can show them the appropriate UI. So let's go back here and let's go ahead and create an API call. And we're going to call this API call get user roles. And we have this request here. So we can just copy this request here, paste it in here. This is actually user roles view, I believe it's called. It's called user roles view. And let's go ahead here and we can just add this call here. And now we need to add our headers, and we have these headers here. And let's go ahead and add our headers. This is the API key. We also have authorization, and we have this range, right? So you want to be using everything, right? Everything that you have here. And we have URL parameters. That's for filtering, right? We need to filter it. But right now, let's go ahead and test it and see if it works. Okay, so let's go ahead and response and test. And that way we should get all the users and all the roles that they belong in. So test API call. And here we are, right? So this is the user ID and they're a member of this writer role. And this is another user ID and they're a member of this admin role. Now, of course, we don't want to get all the users. We want to filter by the authenticated user, right? We want to have the ability to filter these users. And so let's go back to call definition. And let's add a variable, gonna be the user ID, and this is a string. Hit save, and now for the query parameters, we can use this here, this URL parameters. We're gonna have this user ID, and we're gonna have select, which is what we want. We want to select everything, specific value. And here for the user ID, you can just set it from a variable, which is that user ID that we've defined here. And for the query parameter, this is going to be the query parameter here. Click save. Now for the user ID, this should not be the actual user ID. This needs to be EQ dot and the user ID. And now, as you can see, we are only getting the information for this specific user. Now, if you scroll down, you can capture this roles information, right? You just need to capture this. You want to add this to JSON path. Save this as user roles, hit save, and now we're going to have this user roles information in our Auth Flow UI, which means that we can take conditional action depending on if they are in this role or in that role or here or there. All right, so the API call is complete. The next thing that we need to do is we need to execute it when the user logs into the app, and we need to store the resulting roles in an app state variable. So it's available throughout the app. So let's go ahead and define our app state variable. We're going to do user roles. This is a list of strings. And let's go back here. Let's go back to our home page. And let's execute this API call right at the top. So as the page is loading, we're going to be executing this call, add an action, API call, open. And now we're going to execute this API get user roles. We're going to add these additional variables. And remember, it's not going to be just the user ID. We need to actually prepend it, right? So if we click here, the value is going to be EQ dot and then the user ID. So we need to combine text, and it's going to be something like this, I believe, EQ dot, and then the user ID, and then click here. We have the authenticated user ID, confirm, and now we have that here. And so if the API call is successful, we want to save the results, the roles, in our app state variable. So we're going to click here, app state, update app state, user roles, set value, and we want to get the action outputs. We want to get this. And remember, we have JSON body, but we also have JSON path. We have predefined path. Okay, so we can select user roles that we have defined, and that will save it to app state. If we have an error, then it's good practice to do an informational dialog box that will display everything, right? All the results. So you can do action outputs, API response, and you can do row body text. And so if in rare cases where you have an error, you can see exactly what the error is. And so now when we run the app, the user is going to get authenticated. And once they're logged in, the app is going to ask Supabase for the roles for that authenticated user. So if I'm logged in, it's going to come back with the admin role. If Tom is logged in, it's going to come back with the writer role. And so now Flow will have this crucial information, right? It's not only going to know who is the user that's authenticated, it's also going to know which roles the user is a member of. And so now in your app's UI, you can use various conditional logic to display or not display various things. So as an example, let's say we only want admins to be able to create new articles here. So that's very, very easy. You can select this button and you can only show it to people that are admins or of admin roles. Go ahead and do that right now. Click here, conditional, and now we can search for user roles, and we can say list contains item, which means list, which is the user roles, contains this specific role that is going to enable this functionality. And in this case, this is the admin role, right? So you can click here and you can do something like combine text and you can put admin here, okay? So confirm, and this thing is now conditional. It's only going to be displayed if the user is of the admin role. Okay, so let's go ahead and test it out. Let's try logging in as myself or logging in as Tom, and let's see if we're able to see that button. Let's go ahead and restart our app. All right, so here's our app, and as you can see, we're logged in as Tom, and Tom does not see that button because Tom is not in the admin role. So Tom can do a lot of things, but there are certain things that he won't be able to do even via the UI, not to mention via the database because that has been locked up, but he cannot do various things via the UI. Let me go ahead and log out and log in as myself, and I should be able to see that new article button. So let's go ahead and log out. I'm gonna log back as myself, and as you can see, I'm logged in as myself and I can see this button, so I can click on it and I have that UI functionality, not to mention the backend database permission to actually go forward with this functionality and actually create new articles on the database level. Now, one useful thing that you can do is you can go back here and you can go to the profile page and you can actually display the role here, for instance, right? So if you come over here, you can do a combined text and you can do role, add text, come over here, and we have this app state here, user roles. And let's say you want to display the first role the user in. Okay, obviously we only have one role for each of the users, so this is going to suffice. Click here, role, and this is now going to display the user's role. Let's go ahead and restart our app. And this is good practice in order to see whether we are getting the right roles from the backend and whether the role is correct for the user. You always want to be doing this as you're developing the app. All right, so here we are. We see this new article button there. We come over here, and as you can see, it says role admin. And if I log out and I log back as Tom, it should say role writer. Let's go ahead and log in. I no longer see the button, and I come back here and it says role writer. And so now we've come back full circle. We've locked it up at the database layer, and we also locked it up at the app layer as well. And so regardless of what the user is trying to do, they won't be able to do a database layer because we have these role level security policies in place. And they'll also won't have the access to the capabilities, to the functions on the UI layer, right? Because they just won't be able to see the UI elements if they're not part of the right role. And so now that we have all of this set up, it's actually very, very easy to add more users or to remove users from a particular role. So if I go back here to my user roles here, and let's say I want Tom to also be part of admin role and be part of writer role as well. So it's actually very easy. I can just come back over here, insert a row, and I'm going to select Tom here. We're going to find Tom. This is Tom right here. And I'm going to add Tom to the admin role. And now Tom is going to have access to every single feature and functionality that's available to me as well. So I'm going to hit save. And now we've added another record, right? So now we have two roles, two admin roles. This is me. This is Tom. Tom is in two roles. I'm in just one role, but nonetheless, now Tom is also able to see everything that I see. So now let's go ahead and refresh our app here. Let's go ahead and reload our app. And here we are logged in as Tom, and we have access to that new article functionality. Come back here. Now this here is still displaying writer, and that is because we are only displaying the first role. Okay, if we display two roles, it's gonna have writer and admin there as well. Okay, so if we come back over here, and let's say we add another role, we come here, we copy this, we come here and we paste this, and we say, okay, I want to display this, the second role. Okay, so if I do this, we are gonna see two roles here. All right, so here's Tom. Come back over here, and now you're seeing writer and admin as well. We should probably add space there, but you do get the picture. And so thanks to these fine-grained access controls, thanks to Supabase RLS, thanks to Auth Flow's conditional widgets, you can finally create really, really robust apps that give different permissions to different users based on what kind of role they are a member of. And obviously this is going to be useful in all kinds of different applications, right? Tons and tons of different applications, whether you want to create a dashboard, you want to create some kind of a blog platform, a content management platform, some kind of a social media site with moderation, etc., etc. Even come to think of it, many of the apps that I've built before on this channel, they can definitely benefit from this functionality. And the best way for you to benefit from this functionality is to be able to view and or clone this app. And you will be easily able to do so when you join our amazing Patreon community. And when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to get access to this exact app that I built here, which means you're going to get a head start. I'm also going to include my ChatGPT conversation as well as my Supabase schema. So you're going to have everything that you need in order to get started with authorization or multi-tenant apps that have various functionalities, various UI elements, various permissions, depending on who is currently logged in. So I think many of you are going to love this functionality, and you're going to be excited to be able to view and or clone this app, as well as get access to a ton of other resources that I work hard in order to make it all come together. Plus, as always, when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're also going to get access to every single other app that I built on the channel. I built over 150 apps. So far, you're going to get access to all of them. So if you're working on another app, you need another piece of functionality, you need to learn how to implement this specific feature or that feature, chances are I've done it before. So you'll be able to easily clone one of these other apps and adapt or co-op some of the features that I built in your apps. You're free to do that. There are no issues at all. It is my way of thanking my amazing supporters. And that's not all. When you join our rapidly growing Patreon community, you're also going to get access to some extra content. So things like Q&As, behind the scenes content, as well as our Patreon supported masterclass series where I do deep dives on important topics that the community cares about. And in fact, just recently I did a Q&A. I did a deep dive on this very, very amazing and promising tool that a lot of people are very, very excited about, and then frankly asked me to come up with a deep dive tutorial, and that is exactly what I did. So a lot of people got a ton of benefit from that tutorial as well as that Q&A. And some people even said that even though they didn't ask any questions that they wanted me to answer, they still got a ton of value from that Q&A presentation as well. And above and beyond, when you join our amazing, rapidly growing Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work, and that is greatly, greatly appreciated. So if any of that sounds like it's going to provide you with some level of value in your no-code journey as you're growing your no-code arsenal, as you're building more and more apps, gaining more and more experience, then I'll definitely urge you to check it out and consider becoming a member. And you can do just that via the link just below this video.